Recording in progress.
All right, Charles Moskowitz here. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, here live at YouTube and subscribing platforms, both on podcast and other platforms. Thank you very much. We're going to talk today about Zimbabwe politics, a little bit about the history of Zimbabwe. Most Americans are not familiar with what's going on in Zimbabwe. Angela Chimboza is here. She represents she's a consultant in the United States, native of Zimbabwe. We have two other guests as well that Angela is going to introduce. But before we do that, Angela, thank you for joining me. And could you please give us a quick thumbnail of the history of Zimbabwe from the time of the breakaway by Ian Smith right up till today?
Sure. Thank you, Charles, for giving us this platform today. We are so pleased. We're so happy. And of course, we want the whole world to know about Zimbabwe. It's a good opportunity for that.
Indeed.
And before we do that, I want to introduce my colleagues here.
Thank you.
We have the Honorable Daniel Molokele in the to the left of me, underneath Charles. I don't know how the setup is for everybody.
That's fine. Yep.
One of our leaders in Zimbabwe in the opposition party. And then I have on the other side, we have Tim Ringari. He is one of the activists based here in America. And we are so pleased to have you host us today, Charles. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And like I said, we are all in Zimbabweans, and we are mostly all seeking for democracy for our country, because there are a lot of things that are happening in Zimbabwe. So Tim and Daniel will share with you most of what happens. And for the viewers watching us, thank you very much for watching. And I'll drop off in a little bit because I have a commitment that I cannot wait. Thank
Understood.
You very much.
Thank you, Angela. So Daniel, you are in the opposition party right now. What is happening in Zimbabwe with regard to the government in place? Are they a dictatorship? Are you able to function as an opposition figure? And is your party able to function okay? Daniel?
Yes, thank you so much, Charles, for hosting us.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Molokele. I'm a member of parliament in Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. And I also serve in the national leadership of the main opposition party as the Deputy Treasurer General. Yeah, the democratic space keeps shrinking every day in Zimbabwe. The ruling party, ZANU-PF under Mnangagwa, is determined to ensure that they do not lose power, because it's clear that they are increasingly unpopular.
I see.
So we could say that Zimbabwe is one of those countries that are a closed democracy, where there is limited participation of the opposition and civil society voices that speak out against the corruption and other excesses, human rights abuse of government. So Zimbabwe is not that country that you can recommend as a democratic country at the moment. It's a contested democracy, and we need more international voices to highlight the situation in Zimbabwe, so that the ruling party and the President Mnangagwa cannot continue to suppress and repress divergent views.
Now, I think that from my very brief understanding, Zimbabwe has not had much of a modern tradition of democratic institutions, particularly under the very long rule of Robert Mugabe, who I think started out as a Democrat, but who gradually became more of a dictator, almost a dictator for life. And now you're saying that the present government is also operating in that mold. They're not really allowing for the development of opposition parties, of a free press, of a free media, of individual rights, of national rights, of human rights. And that the situation is deteriorating at this point, which is very troubling, especially for a country that we hope becomes a great, independent democratic center of Africa. I mean, a great, one of the great breadbaskets of Africa, one of the great lands of magnificent tourism, and all this potential to become a member of the free nations of the world. And it does seem, unfortunately, like that this particular dictator is entrenching in power. And basically diminishing the rights of people. So, Daniel, what can be done at this point? I mean, you're in opposition. Are you planning on challenging the present government at some point? Will you strive to become an elected prime minister?
Okay, so in Zimbabwe, we have a leader who is a popularly elected president. So the next elections are going to happen in 2023. So we would be happy if the international community keeps its eyes on Zimbabwe, especially to make sure that we have political reforms that will allow us to level the political or electoral field. For example, to open up the broadcasting media. We just have one television channel in the entire country since independence, since 1980. And there is no diversity or plurality of media voices. We also need to make sure that the electoral commission is independent from the ruling party, is more independent, is more neutral. We need to make sure that the Zimbabwe Republic Police and other law enforcement agents are less political and more neutral, because right now they are being used to suppress expression for the divergent views. So there are many other issues where state institutions are being used to protect the long role or the extended role of ZANU-PF. But on the ground, we are very clear as the opposition that a lot of people are looking forward to voting, and they're going to vote against ZANU-PF, and they're going to vote for change. So we also need to worry about them stealing elections in terms of interfering with the outcome of the election process and rigging elections. So those are some of the issues we need the international community to be interested in. And also they are arresting and abducting and detaining civil society voices and opposition voices. So those are some of the things. We've got political prisoners in Zimbabwe that include Makomborero Ruzivishe and others. So we need international voices. I know Amnesty International has recently joined calls to support human rights activists and civil society leaders and opposition political leaders who are continually being harassed using the Zimbabwe Republic Police and the court system. So yes, Zimbabwe has a good potential to be one of the most respected, one of the most admired countries in Africa. God has blessed us with a lot of resources, natural resources and human resources. We do have a diaspora community. We have millions of us who are all over the world, including the United States. So all we need is the political leadership that cares for his people, that has got a clear vision for the country, and we are good to go as a country.
Well, I hope to shine a light on what's going on in Zimbabwe, because in a way it's going on in other countries around the world, including our own United States, quite frankly. Maybe not quite at the same level, but we've also had a crackdown on free speech and on media. We even had a situation where a sitting president, Donald Trump, was purged from Twitter and Facebook, and that any discussion of certain topics, such as the last election, you can basically be purged. You can lose your channel, and that it is a verboten topic in the mainstream media in the United States. Unfortunately, we've also had a phenomenon where we also have political prisoners now. We have hundreds of people who are being held without charge in a prison in Washington, D.C., because they had because of the incursion into the U.S. Capitol. And there's evidence that the FBI was actually at least partially, if not wholly, involved in instigating that incident. And they seem to be behaving in a way that's similar to the police apparatus in Zimbabwe. Not as bad, and I'm not condemning all FBI agents here, but there are echoes of that. And I think there are echoes of this going on in other countries around the world, a lot of it under the guise of this so called emergency with the pandemic, which is another subject we can't talk about. Tim, why don't you weigh in at this point and talk a little bit about your activities in politics in Zimbabwe?
Thank you very much, Charles, and everybody on the panel. I just want to extend my gratitude to everybody that is fighting for freedom all over the world. Like Honorable Molokela said, he couldn't have summed it up in a nutshell. But like you already alluded to, you talked about from the time Ian Smith left and to the point where we are now. I think we have been in a sort of reckless, ruleless state of affairs, where we go back into the 80s, where we had the mass elimination of people in what was termed Gukurahundi, that killed a lot of our own people who were
Now that was
standing.
under Mugabe, right?
Yes, that was
Right.
under Mugabe.
Okay.
Yes, so under the disguise of cleaning out bandits, but actually it was like a ethnic cleansing, which has not been taken care of until today. So the push and the trauma, like we know about the Nuremberg trials, where the people that were responsible for the elimination of the Holocaust victims were taken under jurisdiction and given the way to defend themselves. We haven't had any of that taken care of. So the trauma of that has kind of uh, come across in the past 40 years, where our populations as people has been migrants in many countries, like a people with no states. So at the same time as we're trying to move and help our people, we have a person who was responsible, like Honorable Molokele said earlier, who was responsible for that state-sponsored violence. He is now the leader. So now you have a conundrum where we are like, okay, where do we cry out for help? And shows like yours and many others, I guess from now we can build that relationship where we can advance the victims rights and all this other stuff. Now coming back to my activism, I have always been trying to stand up for my people and make sure that we get the voices heard of the people that are hurting. And in so doing, I've been part of the MDC structures here in the United States of America in conjunction with the Canadians, where we are trying to push for democratic rights in terms of protests and coming to talk to Congress people and the White House staff in all administrations to try and get our people the reprieve that they need. For Charles, the history of America, it was only after the French helped the revolutionaries that the Americans could really reclaim what they really believed was theirs. So we also believe that in order for us to get where we need to, we also got to get some help from everybody, like Honorable Molekele said, and Miss Angela Chimboza already alluded to. So yeah, that's my role in that.
Well, I think that you're welcome. I think it's a part of a growing international movement where you have nation states reasserting their sovereign rights, their democratic rights, and I frankly see the Trump administration as part of that. I think Brexit was a part of that. You have those movements around the world where you have nation states reemerging and achieving their natural democratic rights. Now, Tim, are you a part of an ethnic minority that is being purged in Zimbabwe? Is that what's going on?
No. It's now it has become. It's no longer about ethnic minorities. It has become. If you are a proponent of democracy, you are being purged.
I understand.
So yeah, when they started in the 1980s with Mugabe, it was disguised under ethnic purging. But now we have seen that it was people who were standing up for their democratic rights that were being eliminated under so-called ethnic purging. So yeah, right now it's everybody who speaks up, like Honorable Molokele said, because he's on the ground. He speaks to the people on the ground, the victims, the people that have lost their fathers, their mothers, their daughters, and the senseless killings that happen and tortures and beatings that they are still experiencing today in a society that has a literacy rate of about 90%.
Incredible, and I think that quite frankly, much of the world looked the other way and gave a pass because Mugabe was a leftist and he was a communist, and he was seen as a good guy by this sort of internationalist liberal establishment that looks the other way whenever you have a dictator like that. You had Haile Mariam in Ethiopia, the same deal. He was involved with mass atrocities against his own people, and the rest of the world and the media, the elites of the world, looked the other way. Honorable Molo Kelly, I want to ask you about the upcoming election because there were problems. I don't want to get into details because it's a censored topic here in the United States regarding the last election. I don't want to, again, I'm not making any accusations here for the people that might censor me on that. I'm just simply noting this as a fact that everyone understands. What can be done in Zimbabwe under these very difficult circumstances to make sure that there is a free election where every vote is counted and where there's no voter suppression in the form of fake votes?
Yeah, on mute.
Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There is a push, even the United States government, among other international governments, they are all pushing to say that there is need for political reforms. There is need to ensure that we open up the democratic space. I forgot to mention earlier that in Zimbabwe, we have a history of a military that is heavily involved in our political process. So that's one of the key electoral reforms, to say, let the army remain in the barracks, let the army not be involved in palace politics, state house politics, which they are heavily involved at the moment. And we want to see to it that those conditions, especially knowing that Zimbabwe is a member of the Southern African Development Community, which is a regional bloc for Southern African countries. And they, more than 10 years ago, adopted electoral guidelines, which are like standard guidelines for all countries in Southern Africa. Mm-hmm. And Zimbabwe, when you see, there are a lot of sort of points that are in that document. And Zimbabwe is scoring very lowly in most of these documents, the terms and conditions for a free and fair election. So we will need to push with the international community support to ensure that Zimbabwe tries to make reforms so that it at least meets the minimum guidelines that are there from the Southern African Development Community. If those minimum guidelines are met, then the elections will increase in terms of credibility. The last elections were disputed. The previous elections were disputed. We now have a history, a trend of disputed elections. And the reason is because they are always manipulated. So we will need a lot of pressure to make sure that the guidelines that SADC has adopted are adopted by Zimbabwe as a country. And if that happens, if the institutions like the Electoral Commission, the broadcasting authorities are opened up, the state media is opened up to alternative voices, then you will see even the law enforcement agents like the Republic Police are neutral. We will see that most Zimbabweans will come out in their numbers and vote. We have a culture of elections in our country, so people really want to vote. So the question is, are they voting and are they being allowed to vote freely? And right now, there are clear concerns that need to be addressed. So we really need to have a push prior to the elections in 2023. But the position which the opposition has is that whatever kind of reforms, we are not boycotting the elections, because if we do that, ZANU-PF will just proceed and declare itself the winner without even opposition. So we're going to contest, we're going to fight for reforms at the same time, and we're just going to hope that with the support of the international community in Africa and the rest of the world, we're going to allow for change. We've seen in recent countries, in recent elections, especially our neighboring country, Zambia, in August this year, Malawi 2 years ago, we've seen that the ruling party tried to manipulate the electoral process, but they eventually were disappointed. So we have a new ruling party in the neighboring country of Malawi. We have a new ruling party in the neighboring country of Zambia. So there is an opportunity for Zimbabwe to also have a new ruling party, because the economy is getting worse, poverty is on the increase, corruption is high, there's a lot of patronage, politics of patronage. So on the ground, people are ready for change. there is opportunity for a new leadership in the country.
Perhaps Zimbabwe might take an example in the United States of what is happening here with a grassroots movement that is taking back our elections, and that just bore fruit in the state of Virginia. The reason why the Virginia election was not stolen, why it was honest, why the people were heard, why every legitimate vote was counted and every illegitimate vote was dismissed, was because the Republican Party encouraged thousands of people, regular activists, retired people, teenagers, housewives, anyone who cares about our electoral process, to volunteer at the local level, at the precinct level, and to man the voting booths and to man the counting stations, to examine every vote, to make sure that every vote is looked at and that bad votes were not counted. And also the Republican Party had a staff of lawyers on call so that if there were any problems in any of the polling places, those lawyers were ready at the drop of a dime to go to action and to bring legal light on it. And the result is that there was a clean election where you had a victory in this case for the Republican candidate. And that same movement is now spreading all over the United States. You have thousands of people who are getting involved in politics, electoral politics at the local level in all 50 states. They're volunteering, they are becoming staff members of election boards, they are signing up to man the election booths. And I think that that's what's going to happen in Zimbabwe, because it doesn't sound like the electoral authorities and the government is all that interested in having a clean election. And to get international support, that's very important. But ultimately, they can't do much outside. It has to be done inside. You have to have the people of Zimbabwe, as you say, they want democratic change. They're going to have to get involved in their local communities and start to volunteer and show up at voting places and monitor votes and learn how that works. So, just a thought. Tim?
Okay. Yes. I mean, the one thing that is different here is, like you, Honorable Malakela keeps saying, is the state that runs the operation is involved in anything. It's like a military kind of state. So the difference with that being in America, there's a representation of both parties, the Democrats and Republicans, and whoever is contesting, they can inspect the voters' roll. They can check for any changes in what is going on in the demarcations of borders and voting registration and all that. That can be verified before an election actually takes place. In Zimbabwe, I think the last time, if Honorable Molekele, I think he can speak more on that. There was no voters' roll inspection that was given. They couldn't even find out or verify if the voters on the rolls were still alive. And we found out later that they had the exercise where they were actually changing ages for people, some that who are deceased, that are still appearing.
Same thing happened here. Same thing happened here in several states.
Yeah. So at least in America, you can go in and double check and make sure that, like you said, you have a team of lawyers that stands up, and you have people at the booths manning, showing people that can actually do it. In Zimbabwe, we have Honorable Molekele can elaborate on this, what they call assisted voting for people who they call illiterate or don't know or don't understand what is on the pad. But what we understand is it's actually coercion that they will say, "Oh, you can't read nor write, so
we're going to vote for you." Yeah, the same thing happens here. They call it bundling. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the importance of America and the international society is this: once you endorse it or say this vote was not taken in a proper manner, you help the voices on the ground, because most, unlike America, there has the Second Amendment where everybody has the right to carry an arm and whatever. In Zimbabwe, the police and the law enforcement, they have all the military equipment and everything.
They have a monopoly
So
on that. Yeah, that's
yes,
troubling.
yes. So like when we go back to, like, let's say we ain't gonna even go back to very far. If we go back to 2018, we know that when people were standing up and waiting for the results of the elections on August 1, people were shot dead just for being in the streets and trying to say their voice and talk about what had gone on. So we would really love a situation whereby we can verify that the voters that are there, whereby we can inspect and then we can see what the ballot papers are. And the other trick is the polling stations. We know there's some polling stations that they put up that we don't even have access to because of the violence and the threat of torture. So we want to get to where America is, where everything is at least about 80% transparent, and then that way we can move forward from there. That's why I say Honorable Molekele, I think, is keeping on pointing to this, that you are very important, and the platform that you're giving us is very important, to where we are saying to the world, let's open this can up and see what's really inside.
Indeed. Honorable Molokole, can your party mount such an effort in Zimbabwe? I mean, it takes such courage, obviously, to go out and do this kind of work. Literally, I mean, you're taking your life in your hands, and I totally get that. But I mean, are you in a position, and your party in a position, and also, have you been in contact with the Biden administration? Are they helping? Are they doing anything to shine a light on this?
Thank you so much, Charles. I know for certain that the United States Embassy in Harare, in the capital of Zimbabwe, is very hands-on, and they've been able to support the cause for democracy in the country.
Good.
They have really articulated a strong position. You know, the ruling party claims that our economy is not doing well because of the smart targeted sanctions against some of the leaders. And the United States Embassy has been very outspoken and vocal in ensuring that the lack of credible political leaders in the country becomes the center stage, the lack of good governance, the lack of moral values of the political leaders, the corruption that is rampant. Also, recently, President Biden invited neighboring countries to some international forum, and Zimbabwe was deliberately excluded by the United States government as part of the efforts to put pressure for political reforms in Zimbabwe.
Good.
So, yes, it's happening, and the European Union and the United Kingdom, British government, they are all having some form of diplomatic pressure to ensure that there is a shift in terms of opening up the democratic space. But us as Zimbabweans, there is a strong push, especially with our party. Our recent elections were in 2018, and in 2019, the opposition party changed its constitution and created a new structure where we've got polling station-based branches. And the polling station-based branches will be very important for 2023 because now we've got localized structures, and they're at the forefront in defending the vote. We saw that in Zambia in August this year, where when people had finished voting, they gathered, because the law allows you to be within 100 meters after 100 meters of a polling center.
Good,
so we're hoping in 2023, our local polling station-based branches will be able to mobilize people to come out and vote, to encourage those who are hesitant to vote, and then also to make sure that they are within and near the polling station, so that if there are efforts by the ruling party to stuff the ballots, to rig, to intimidate our polling agents and so on, they will be on hand. And also to make sure that once the results are announced, there are people on the streets to celebrate, because according to our constitution, each polling station, once they finish counting the ballots, they are supposed to post the results outside the polling station. So those results should be available to the community, and they should start celebrating, because the National Electoral Commission normally withholds the results from urban areas or from areas where they think the opposition is doing well. They just keep them so that they shape the emotional narrative in terms of the response to the results, and only announce results of strongholds of the ruling party in rural areas, so that people do not see that we have actually won. So they are then able to tamper with the results. And last time they successfully tampered with the results. And now we're pushing to make sure that there's massive registration, especially of first-time voters, of voters who are leaving high school or teenage voters, because the legal age of majority is 18 years. So some of the people who were 14 years old last time, were 15 years old, 16 years old, are now eligible to vote. So the youth vote is
Good.
very important
Indeed.
for 2023. We saw that in Zambia. They had an increase of almost 1 million new registered
Oh,
voters.
that's good.
When the results came, the gap between the president and the new president was almost 1 million. So most of the first-time voters were voting for the opposition. And we want to push for voter registration to be made local, to ensure that more people register to vote. And more importantly, on the day of the election, we want the local polling station-based branches to go out door by door and mobilize people to vote, because we know that if people come out in their numbers, it will make it difficult for the system to tamper with the results, and it's possible for us to claim victory.
You can overwhelm the system with legitimate votes. And
Yes.
who in Zimbabwe, who has the authority to actually make election laws? Like in the United States, we have the Constitution, Article 2 says that only the state legislators can make election laws. Now, that was ignored by several American states this last time, particularly Pennsylvania and Georgia. But the fact is that there's now a case before the Supreme Court that is hoping to address that issue, and that really only the states and the state legislators in the United States have the plenary authority to make election laws and to decide like how much people have to stay away from the polling places and what election day is and all the rest. So how does that happen in Zimbabwe in the sense that it won't become politicized?
So at the moment, political reforms are effected through the Parliament of Zimbabwe, of which I'm a member, and there is an electoral act. So we're pushing for that electoral act to be changed to open up the democratic space. But the ZANU-PF, for the ruling party of Zimbabwe, has an upper hand because they have the majority of legislators. So it's a uphill task for them. As someone once said, that ZANU-PF will not reform itself out of power. So we will up the game. We have, as an opposition party, launched a program to pressure ZANU-PF, highlighting the parts of the electoral law that need to be changed or amended to open up the space. But also we are hoping civil society voices and international voices will continue to increase, international observer missions and so on will continue to push, so that we're at least able to meet the required minimum standards of the regional SADC voter guidelines and electoral guidelines. So yes, it's not going to be easy because NPF will be pushing back. But I think the point is that we need to mobilize the masses on the ground.
Indeed.
We need to be strong at the local community level so that there is a massive voter turnout, and that will be enough to overwhelm the entire system, and that will allow the ruling party to accept and concede defeat, just like what happened 3 months ago in Zambia across the border from Zimbabwe. So we are looking forward to a massive voter turnout, and we are confident that if there is a massive voter turnout, it will be more difficult for the ruling party to rig the results, and we will have a new president, a new ruling party, and give Zimbabwe a new opportunity to have a better tomorrow, a better future.
Well, it's an excellent plan, and I'm glad to shine a light on it. I applaud you for your courage and for doing this, and it's been an honor and a privilege to have all of you on with me today. Please let our listeners and viewers know where they can reach you, how they can help.
Thank you so much, Charles. My Twitter handle is @Molokele. So it's @M. Then my surname is MOLOKELE. And then the MDC Alliance, which is the main opposition party, is got a Twitter handle also, and a website. So if you search on Google, just write MDC Alliance Zimbabwe, or search for our leader. Our leader is Advocate Nelson Chamisa. So you can also search for our president. He's called Advocate Nelson Chamisa. We have a very active Twitter angle and a very active website, and you can reach us through Twitter and our website. We're available and we're highly interactive. We have structures across the world. In the United States of America, we have a very local and dynamic structure of which TIM is part of the leadership in America. In Canada and the US, we have structures in different parts of the United States. So are also accessible through our leadership in the United States and in Canada.
And that's the MDC website, is that right?
Yes, MDC Alliance
MDC
website.
Alliance. Tim, would you like to share any websites or information where people can reach you?
We are on MDC Alliance on Twitter at MDC Alliance North America. You can get us on there. And then we are on the North America page on Facebook. Then we have a Lighthouse at Lighthouse North America Facebook and Twitter handles. And currently there's a campaign to replace President Advocate Nelson Chamisa's vehicle, which was vandalized. I don't know if Ms. Chimboza had told you about this, but they kind of shot at his vehicle when he was traveling to meet the grassroots in Manicaland like a month ago. So now there's an effort right now, fundraising on a GoFundMe page administered by Mr. T. Bashi. You can just see Chamisa GoFundMe for the car. We're trying to replace it with a bulletproof vehicle. Out of the 120,000, I think up to date they raised 102,000 in 39 days. So whoever has $1 or $2 and wants to help a democratic cause across the world, they can go to the Chamisa GoFundMe page and just donate whatever they have. Thank you, Charles.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Angela, thank you very much for setting this up. Daniel and Tim, again, it's an honor and a privilege to help. Please stay in touch. I'd like to follow this story in the coming weeks and months. And I hope you're able to get some outreach into American media because it's a very important story to tell. And I think that you're going to get overwhelming support from average Americans if you do tell it. So, again, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.